Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show. We're broadcasting live in the Men's Health and Women's Wellness of Mississippi studios. Guys, look, are you suffering from low testosterone? Are you suffering from fatigue, decreased muscle tone, lack of energy, low libido, brain fog, sleep disturbances, or did you vote for Kamala Harris in 2024? You, my friends, could be suffering from low testosterone. Text Clay to 601. 327.
I was totally ignoring you until you said that.
I thought, let's wake Shad up over there. Text Clay to 601-327-8550. Well, Shad, it is a proven scientific fact. The data backs it up that people who are low testosterone vote Democrat more than Republican. I didn't make this up, but once I stumbled across it, I was like, ding, ding, ding.
I do see a lot of dudes. I'm like, how many pull-ups can you do, man? Like one? Can you get one out? You know?
Yeah, I will admit that pull-ups are my weakness. Pull-ups are
we gotta
my
get you in
weakness.
the gym, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, look, with gym or no gym, man, that is you train your muscles to do pull-ups.
Pull-ups are it's almost a skill. I mean, granted, it involves strength, but
Sure.
My advice to people who can't do a pull-up is, jump to get the pull-up, get your chin above the bar and hold it as long as you can. And then when you go down, barely go down and do that as much as you possibly can. And then you'll be able to do a pull-up and then you'll do 2 and then 3.
Yeah. The rubber bands help too to get started.
Yeah,
like say, because I can bench press plenty. I can plenty squats back the whole 9 yards. Pull-ups are kind of when you're yanking 250 pounds up.
I don't have as much to get in the air as you have to get in the air. That's true.
It's hold on, my dang. I've got a debacle going on over here with my cords.
Because you had an alligator coming at you.
I need to get some wireless headphones, I do believe. So, all right, we got State Auditor Shad White here in the studio as I torn up my headphones for the second week in a row. Shad, 2028, man. A lot of straw polls floating around. One out at the Rankin County Republican breakfast last month. It's quite a controversial. A lot of news came out of that breakfast. I'll be speaking at that this Saturday, actually. Just remembered. So, hey, if you're going to be at the Rankin County breakfast at Cypress Lodge this Friday, this Saturday morning, your boy will be speaking. Nice. I have no clue what I'm going to be talking about. Maybe some of this conversation. But straw poll, and you won for 2028. Now, you've won another one or two that I've seen floating around online.
Yep.
And this goes back, and you had the Brett Favre stuff come out this week, and you had the rumors floating around online from guys like Joel Carter and whatnot, suggesting that Maga and Trump were upset with you, something even to the extent of you went after my boy Favre, and I'm not behind you. There was all kind of scuttlebutt.
Sure, yeah.
Online. I'm not saying all that came from Joel, but Joel did post some stuff and pictures of himself with Trump, and kind of insinuated you were just a Trump fanboy, and he's actually friends with Trump, and stuff of that nature. And it got me to thinking yesterday or day before on the show, do I really need Trump's rubber stamp on my governor in Mississippi? Sure, is it great? It doesn't hurt, that's for sure. But do I need Trump to come in here and tell me you need to vote for so? I don't. And right now I think you are the front runner. And that's just my personal opinion, and going out talking to people. And one of the things I was concerned about with the Mississippi Swindle book, and me and Sean have talked about this, and I talked about it with you, was I was concerned that it would alienate a segment, and just for a lack of a better term, the Bubbas. That it would alienate that guy because Brett Favre's kind of the guy. But I was wrong. And I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. And I'm looking online, I'm talking to people, I know, a lot of Bubbas that I know. And some people would say I'm a Bubba. And they're more impressed with you going after fraud than they are worried about Brett Favre.
Yeah.
And that was a miscalculation on my part. And
well, I told folks this too as another piece of evidence on that. Somebody asked me the other day, said, well, can you ever drive through the kill again in Hancock County? And I said, brother, I won the kill 10-1 in the last election. You can go back and look at the precinct results.
Yeah.
So they're just good people out there who want the state auditor to do what the state auditor is supposed to do. And I'll tell you on the Trump thing, of course, I'd be honored to have the president's support. I think I'm the pro-Trump candidate of the people who are talking about running for governor. There were some rumors, people mainly who have no idea what they're talking about, saying the kinds of stuff that you were mentioning a second ago. And within about 90 minutes of those rumors percolating up into a news story, the White House called a local news reporter here in Mississippi and gave an official White House statement that said Shad is a great supporter of President Trump. The president loves all his supporters, and President Trump has literally never said a negative thing about Shad White. So I'd ask those folks who think, they know what the president thinks. Do they think they know what he thinks better than the White House's official staff who are telling you what he thinks? And also, number two, when was the last time you heard of the White House calling down and giving a statement to a local Mississippi reporter on a local news story? I've been doing this for a few years now. I've literally never seen it. I've never seen it. And the reason is that they know that I'm a Trump supporter.
Especially the internet scuttlebutt type stuff of that nature, like kind of addressing a rumor.
That's right.
They wanted to put the kibosh in that.
That's right. Exactly right. I've never seen a White House, any White House, say there's an internet rumor in Mississippi, we want to shut it down. But they thought it was important enough to call down and shut it down. And so for those folks who think they may know the president or whatever it is, like, you need to understand, you don't know everything that goes on. And I've got tons of relationships up there. Last month, I went up there, spent about 2.5 hours in the West Wing. I'm not telling you that to pat myself on the back. I'm telling you that because I deeply believe in what President Trump is trying to do. And the folks up there who work with him and around him, those folks understand that. They understand that I'm one of their biggest allies in the state of Mississippi. And so they're not going to just take Steve's word for it off the street. If Steve's like, man, Shad White did too much on this one case or whatever it is, they're going to make up their own mind too about what they think about each individual person down here. And you can turn on your TV, turn on your Twitter account, and you can see me advocating for the president. And that's what matters.
Absolutely. Look, we ran over that first segment. We need to take another break real quick, get back on schedule here. We got State Auditor Shad White here in the Men's Health and Women's Wellness in Mississippi studios on WYAB, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Hit that share button. Hit that like button, drop a comment. Don't forget, we got an exclusive extra interview with Shad coming up at the end of the radio show. So go over to my YouTube. It will be exclusively on the Save JXN YouTube from 9:05 to 9:20, where we'll go through some of your questions and hit up Shad with those. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back into the Clay Edwards Show. We're broadcasting live here in the Men's Health and Women's Wellness of Mississippi studios. We got State Auditor Shad White. Real quick, this segment is brought to you by our friends over at, how about our friends at Stonington Farm Beef, man. Look, grass-fed, grass-finished, 100% Mississippi-raised beef from right down there in Perkinston, Mississippi. Dr. Stonington knows all about it, guys. Again, the meat's mRNA-free, antibiotic-free, and steroid-free. It's as best. It's as good as it gets right here in Mississippi. They come up to Central Mississippi once a month. They meet in 3 local areas in Brandon, Ridgeland, and Florence. Make it really easy for you to pick up your order from them. You cannot order, or you cannot buy off the truck. You have to pre-order. So please keep that in mind. And what you do is you'll call Miss Katie. You're going to talk to the owner. You're going to tell her exactly what you want. She's going to be able to ask any you're going to be able to ask any questions you have. She's going to answer all of them. They're very, very well knowledgeable and informed about the grass-fed beef. I've been eating it for 3 years now, I believe. I love the beef, the ground beef, the hamburger meat. They got the bone broth, and they also now have the grass-fed, what's that stuff that people cook with, not cooking oil. Anyway, I'll remember the name of it in a second. If I wasn't going to tell you, it'd be off the top of my head. It's white. It looks like fat. Anyway,
tallow.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's why I show up right here. Clay.
Yeah, I was just complete brain fart. I've got a big jug of it in my kitchen. My girlfriend's son was cooking some eggs last night, and I was introducing him to tallow. He was cooking.
That was good.
He was cooking with butter. I said, no. Try this. And so they got all that. Check them out, Stonington Farm. That's Stonington with 2 N's farm.com. Shad, man, this has been a fun conversation this morning, man.
Yes,
for full transparency, I reached out to Shad last week. And I said, man, I just want to have you on the show. I know you're thinking about running for governor. At least I hope you are. And I want to have you on, just chop it up like Joe Rogan podcast style, not a bunch of questions and answer type stuff. Just have a real conversation, and I was just talking to you during the break about meeting another local statewide politician and how I'd had differences with him, but after having lunch with him, it really humanized him. And I think that we really got to get back to trying to do that. And we only see these people on our screens, and we lose track that you're a real person. Delbert's a real person. Tate's a real person. Clay Edwards is a real person. We're not
Yep.
just these figures on your screens. And it's good to have real conversations with people and let them get to know you beyond just the veil of political opinion.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
know, so
that's
I
right.
appreciate you coming and sitting down for the audience to
Yeah, no
take the
problem, man.
opportunity for them to get to know you a little bit better. But you're one of the more transparent guys out there anyway, going back to what we said about Twitter and how active you are on social media. So, and I think that's good. And I going back to that conversation, I like that you do that for better or worse. And there's some things you post that I'm like, I probably wouldn't have, but there's a lot of things I post that people say, I probably wouldn't have.
Everybody's gonna be that way.
You know, but I think what it does is it keeps you top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, it's
I
like
think
you
that's
become
right.
water cooler talk.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing, especially when you're in a business of politics where you're going to need people's votes. They're going to need to recognize that name, but like, oh, you know what? He said something I agreed with.
Yep.
And it wasn't in a political ad.
Yep.
It was
That's
something on
right.
Twitter.
That's right.
You know, I think it's a great tool. And I say Twitter is a catch-all for social media.
Yep.
You know, because I copy and paste a lot of my stuff everywhere. You
Sure.
know, I'm like, oh, that was good. I want to make sure my people on Facebook see it too.
Yeah, 100%. Well, here's the other thing that I think is very valuable about being transparent on social media, and this has to do with my job in particular. I mean, a lot of what we do in the state auditor's office is constantly identifying fraud, waste, and abuse. But a lot of times it is fraud, waste, or abuse that we can't do anything about. You know, so we'll see a state agency buy $5,800 TVs. I don't run the state agency. I can't walk in. I have legally no authority to walk in and tell them, stop doing that. That's too expensive. So how do you get government to move and to change? Well, for me, a lot of it is informing taxpayers about how their money's being spent. And so over time, over the last several years, the more I've talked about it online, the more people start to pay attention. I think they're going to demand results at the end of it. They're going to start electing people who run on a platform of cutting waste. And now, especially since you've seen Elon Musk and Doge and how effective they have been at uncovering all this fraud, waste, and abuse, people want that at the state level. It's not just in Mississippi. You're seeing it in every state. So the only way to get news out about that stuff that we're finding is through social media. You cannot depend on the Clarion Ledger to write an article every time you find something terrible. Sometimes the Clarion Ledger will write an article criticizing me for finding it in the first place. Now, not always, but sometimes.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's right.
We like waste and fraud. Right. Would you stop it?
Would
you stop it? Look, I've got a buddy of mine that's a contractor, and he did some stuff at JPS and just told me these stories about the waste.
Yep.
In their offices, these extravagant offices, these $5,000 couches, these 80-inch TVs. Now, in defense of 80-inch TVs, you can get one for $800 at Walmart nowadays.
That's right.
But still, why do you need an 80-inch TV in your office at JPS?
Yep.
Why do you need a $5,000 couch? And one of my gripes with you early on was, why aren't you going after Jackson? And then I found out why you can't go after Jackson unless you're called upon. You can't, right?
That's
right.
The
way that
can't
kind of
even
works.
audit it. Yep.
Can't even audit it. So, and that's just not just Jackson. That's municipalities in general, right?
That's
like registered cities.
That's right.
Can't, but you can go after county.
Correct. We can audit counties. We can audit school districts. Basically anything but municipalities for whatever reason. That's tucked into the law. There was a bill. It was not this past session, but it was a session before. It was written by Representative Shonda Yates that would have allowed us to go in and audit cities like Jackson. Not every city, but cities like Jackson.
I'm a big fan of Shonda.
Even that bill failed. Bill failed. I was for it. I told her on the phone I was for it, and we worked a little bit with her to make the language palatable to, or what we thought was going to be palatable to representatives, and it just didn't pass. So there's constraints, basically, is what I'm saying. There are constraints that you work within a state auditor, and if you're not willing to use every means of communication, including social media and podcasts, radio shows, everything, to get the word out about what you're finding, you're not being effective. You're just not being.
Let's talk about this. 2028, you're known for going after fraud. You're going after waste, and you've really grabbed a hold of this Mississippi Doge, Moj. What is Shad White's platform for 2028 if you decide to run for governor? Have you decided?
Have not decided, but we'll continue to pray on it and have made no secret that I'm seriously thinking about running for governor. And the reason really goes back to the stuff that we were just talking about. If you spend years finding brokenness in state government, but you have no ability to fix it, at some point you want to be able to get your hands into the engine of the car and fix it. I spoke at Boys State yesterday to 300 young men who are interested in politics. And I told them, this was at Oxford Boys State. It's the high school program for young guys that are interested in politics. And I told him, imagine being in a job where you're a mechanic. You're allowed to open up the hood of a car and you can look in and see all the problems. You can dissect everything, but you're not allowed to fix a thing. How long would you be willing to do that job without getting a little frustrated? So if you're asking me, what would you do day one if you're in charge? Day one is to start an effort to reform state government and get rid of all the fat. I mean, we've got state government giving taxpayer dollars to nonprofits that are hosting parties called a quinceañera when they're supposed to be testing people for sexually transmitted diseases. That is wild to me.
In a capital city,
Absolutely.
that is the, at least it was last time I checked, the number one, not per capita, period, the number one fastest growing HIV population in the country.
I believe it.
And that is above Chicago, LA, cities with 10 or 12 million people. We have citizens catching HIV faster at a higher clip than them. And again, not per capita. Like, we're the murder capital per capita, but we are the HIV capital, period.
That's wild. And we're just blowing money. We sent $850,000 to 3 nonprofits with the goal of testing people for HIV/AIDS. And they, over the course of 5 years, could only prove that they tested a total of 35 people. That's the kind of stuff we find in the state auditor's office.
That's criminal to me.
It's almost criminal, right? It's incredibly wasteful. At the best, is incredibly wasteful.
Especially considering the potential life-threatening
100%.
Risk that it poses.
That's right.
It's criminal. Should be.
We've got to do something about the rampant waste in state government. And then once you do that, you have money to invest in the things that matter. Our police are not paid nearly enough. We have a huge recruiting problem in police. Have to get good people in uniform, keeping us safe every day. Our teachers are still not paid enough. You know, we've raised teacher pay over the course of the last few years, but there's a news article this month that said, once again, Mississippi has the lowest paid teachers in the country, not by like purchasing power, but just the lowest paid teachers in the entire country. We have to get more money into the classroom, less money on all this administrative bloat and fat. So that's day one. That's topic number one, is to cut the fat, get money going to cop salaries, teacher salaries, roads and bridges, tax cuts, the stuff that actually matters. I think more long run, a big thing that we have to do as a state is we've got to reform our universities. I mean, our universities are cranking out kids with degrees that aren't relevant to our economy at all. Tons of them then leave and go somewhere else.
Your brain drain stuff is something I've been a big fan of. And I'm a huge fan of tech schools and trade schools. And I talked about that a lot yesterday. And that's how we got to make America work again.
That's exactly
right. But we got to teach them how.
That's right.
To work again.
That's right.
Not go get an underwater basket weaving degree. I know that's a funny little thing everybody likes to say, but it's true. That's about as useless as so many of these degrees
Gender
are.
studies ain't far off from that. It's not far off.
Gender studies, race crap, all of that, CRT, all of these woke degrees that you just end up with these administrative jobs, ironically, in government. We don't need any more of that.
No. And that's if they can get a job. Usually it's taking on a ton of debt. They can't get a job here other than being a barista. And then so they move to some other city. And now what have we done as taxpayers? We've subsidized the indoctrination of this kid, and we don't even get any return.
And we've straddled them with a debt that they're stuck with.
Yeah, bingo.
And I'm not for erasing people's student debt. You made that bad decision, unfortunately, and you're stuck with it. It is what it is. Now, if you're going to erase their $200,000 in debt, I would like to talk about some tax debt that I have. I would like to erase. Give me a tax credit.
Oh yeah.
If you're going to give them that, then I'm okay, cool. Everybody's getting this, because a lot of us didn't make that choice by hook or by crook. We ended up not going to a major university, and we went and did life another direction. And I'm not saying which one's right or which one's wrong.
Look, I went to a university and took on a bunch of debt for law school. My wife did too. And the way we paid down that debt is we had one car between the two of us. We lived in a small apartment. It wasn't the best apartment in the world. We saved every single penny. We really didn't vacation for about 2.5 years. And we poured every extra penny that we got into paying our student debt down. And then, 4 or 5 years later, Biden comes along and says, we're just going to erase student debt. I think, what about all that sacrifice that I made? What about the fact that we couldn't go out to eat for about a year? That's fundamentally unfair. That's the kind of stuff that I'll say. This big picture, we talked about cutting the fat and getting money where it makes a difference, reforming universities. The big picture point is we have to have somebody with a little bit more common sense running state government. I think Tate Reeves has done a very good job. We have a ton of momentum as a state, but we can lose all that like that. We can lose it very, very quickly if you have somebody who's not willing to make common sense and sometimes difficult decisions in a job like that. The big thing that motivates me every single day is my kids. You know, I said earlier in the show, I got 3 kids. I wake up every single day thinking, for whatever reason, God and the taxpayers put me in this job. What am I going to do to make Mississippi better for them? So that one day when I die and I leave this earth, have I done something that makes this a place that they want to live and they want to raise a family, where they want to be around their brothers and sisters and their mom and dad, their grandparents, all that kind of stuff. That's the thing that motivates me every single day. I think we got a lot of politicians who don't think like that, and we deserve politicians who will think that way.
We'll be right back with Shad White. All right, man, we are live here with State Auditor Shad White. If you were still watching, if you got any questions for the auditor, would love to see you drop them there. Shad, we did get a question, off air. Somebody had asked about the follow-up on the investigation into misappropriation of funds, or whatever you want to call it, with the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, with the chickens and maybe the farm equipment.
Yep.
I think it was a big Mississippi Today story.
Yep.
And you said, I guess you guys would look into it. Is there any update on that?
Yeah. So short answer is we know about all that stuff, read that story, had been sent a lot of that information just a little bit before the story broke. And we are investigating it, but really on any active investigation, I have to keep the standard line that we always have, which is can't comment on any ongoing investigation. I can say this though, on this particular case, a lot of what was going on in that office was being investigated and explored by federal authorities long before we showed up. So for folks who think, well, I don't know if I trust Shad White to do a good job on this case, you got to know that, one, we are going to do a good job. We have great people in the auditor's office, but 2, you have a second layer of protection here, because you're going to have federal authorities looking at all of this stuff that's going on there too. And look, this is a more general statement. Hopefully people understand by now that I'm not afraid to investigate tough cases, including cases involving sheriffs. A few years ago, we had a sheriff who was in North Mississippi, and he got caught on camera using inmate labor to make his campaign signs. And so we took that to a prosecutor. We built out the investigation. We took it to a prosecutor, and the prosecutor then gets to choose what they want to do with it. The sheriff eventually stepped down.
So what's the charge on something like that?
So for something like that, the prosecutor decided that they were at minimum going to threaten him with a charge, a misdemeanor charge of using, I think it's called servant labor in the law, to benefit your campaign. And so my recollection of that case is that the prosecutor decided to threaten that charge, and then the sheriff then decided to step down. Some people don't like that they should have gone harder on him. Some people say, well, that was too hard. Like, what's the big deal? The big takeaway here that folks need to understand is that the auditor's office doesn't get to decide what happens to people at the end of it. We're kind of like your sheriff in the sense that if there's a burglary, we're going to go investigate the burglary, but we don't get to decide what that person gets sentenced to, whether they get charged with a crime. We're here to build out the facts and to turn that over to the next level of our criminal justice process, which is a prosecutor, a grand jury, and a judge. And then they get to decide what they want to do with that person.
No, I like it, man. I think that's about the best answer you can get out of that, especially on an active investigation. Where do we stand on the news? Have they been to jail yet?
They have not been to jail. So no one in the welfare scandal has been to jail. 7 people have pleaded guilty to either state or federal felonies. And what we are told by federal authorities is they have charged one other person. So it's Teddy DiBiase Jr. He's the last person that they charged. He pled not guilty.
That was pretty recent, right?
Yeah, that was within the last 18 months or a year or so.
And I actually saw that on a wrestling news
website
the other day on YouTube or something. It was kind of the thumbnail or something or another. And it was like Ted DiBiase looking at 30 years in prison, or it was kind of looking at whatever the max penalty was. And it caught my attention. I said, well, that's the first thing I've heard about this in a while.
Yeah, he's the last one that got charged by a prosecutor, and he pleaded not guilty. So federal authorities, federal prosecutors tell us that they believe that trial will happen sometime this year.
And that's federal?
That's federal. Yep. They took our evidence and then built on it and then charged him with a crime. And what we are then told is that once his is done, then the judges will likely sentence all of the people who were found guilty in this to whatever prison time they're ultimately going to get.
All right. Now, this is a question for me. And guys, if y'all got any questions, we've got about 10, 15 minutes here with Shad White. Drop them in the comments here, and we will read your question, as long as it ain't nothing crazy, to Shad and let him answer it. Shad, look, I've often said that, and I get if you're going to run, you go for the top thing. Governor is the big stick in Mississippi. But I have often said that I thought I would like to see you as lieutenant governor, not because I don't think you would be a great governor, but you're so detail oriented. And I've seen you working on policy, and I've seen you down there doing your thing. And the lieutenant governor has so much say on policy and the direction of the state from there. I was like, man, I would love to see Shad in that role. And look, this is just my ignorance here, so I apologize. Is there a reason why governor makes more sense versus lieutenant governor? Do you feel like there's more you can get done as governor versus lieutenant governor? Can you explain that for me?
Yeah, I think that my skill set fits with what a governor does day to day. And maybe I'll explain it this way too. I think that the governor of Mississippi historically has been a pretty weak position under our Constitution.
And that's kind of what I was thinking with your
Yeah.
strong personality and you liking to get things done. Like, I almost feel like at times that Delbert has more power than Tate as far as getting things done. So I just kind of looked at it like, I feel like Shad could maybe get more done.
There are definitely strengths to the lieutenant governor's office. There's no doubt. But I do think that the governor's office today is more powerful than it has ever been in the history of Mississippi for a couple of big reasons. Number one is the power of social media, which we've already talked about. So, 30, 40 years ago, if you wanted to get elected governor in Mississippi, you better hope that the Clarion Ledger editorial board is on your side. Today, there is no Clarion Ledger editorial board that I know of. I mean, my Facebook following is bigger than the circulation of the Clarion Ledger. And that's not a knock on the Clarion Ledger. It's just a statement about the nature of journalism and how the public consumes their information, right?
You and I talked about this election on election night about, my big thing was free speech and them going after podcasters and radio people and everything, and how that election was swung to Trump through podcasts.
Yep, that's right.
Through the social media and everything. And I think it plays a massive role.
That's right.
And it is deprioritized. Your WLBTs are the one, I'll just use them because we're talking about local, and Clarion Ledgers and everything is deprioritized their influence in how people think.
That's right. And if you're the governor, you have a bigger bully pulpit than any other elected official. And so if you're capable of communicating on podcasts and social media, you can drive a message and an agenda better than ever before from that office. Number two reason the governor's office is very powerful now, Tate Reeves had a big court case against the legislature where he won and basically revived the line item veto. So you can cut wasteful spending from the governor's office maybe more effectively than ever before today. And finally, I'd say this: so much money flows through the state agencies that are run by the governor. If you want to fix those state agencies, you really cannot do it from the lieutenant governor's office or the speaker's office. Now, you can cut their funding and you can make demands of them, but if you want to get in the gears and improve their contracting, improve how they're doing business, make them more effective, make them more customer facing for people who are going to those agencies and want to get their driver's license faster or whatever it is, you really need to be in that top job where you're running those agencies. So that's kind of why I think that the governor's office is not only more powerful today than it's ever been, but it's also a fit for a lot of what I've learned in the last few years and my personality and approach to politics too.
And then the influence that you hopefully have over the legislator, the legislation too, as governor, because you can veto.
That's right.
Anything. As long as it ain't veto proof majority.
Yep.
So, I mean, you do wield a lot of influence and you can get your agenda pushed through at times.
Well, and I'll say this too. I guess I've built a reputation for being a rabble rouser sometimes, but I've gotten tons of bills through the legislature because I've very quietly built relationships with key legislators who care about fraud, waste, and abuse like I do. And so I think if you're the governor and you're trying to influence the legislature, your approach should be to build relationships with the lieutenant governor and the speaker as if they are equals. Yeah. You should be meeting with them once a week. You guys should be having breakfast together, even if you're mad at each other. You should be talking about this stuff. That's how you get bills done.
Absolutely. All right. So something that I've talked about in 2028 is, and what really has turned me, into being really happy with the job Tate's done is economic development.
No doubt.
And I think that has got to be where Mississippi is hyper focused from the leadership
Yep.
is economic development and taking advantage of these big corporations. It's yet to be seen long term how these big AI cloud data centers, work out as far as how many jobs do they really produce beyond the construction side of this, which that's great. If they're going to build them somewhere, yes, build them here.
Yep.
I'm not upset about this at all. How, the long-term effects that have on the economy yet to be determined. I don't think they've been around long enough anywhere to really determine like long-term job drivers and stuff like that. But back to economic development, what are some things that you see that you can do to kind of grab that baton from Tate on economic development and keep pushing that?
We have to keep doing what he's doing now, which is continue to develop these mega sites where big businesses will want to come and build their big industrial facilities. That's something his team has done very well, and we got to keep doing it. 2, you've got to keep finding ways to keep taxes low and cut taxes, because that attracts human capital. It attracts folks who want to build their businesses here or move their businesses here. But here's the next step. Here's what has to happen next. And this is not Shad saying this as if I thought of it. This is what any serious economic developer will tell you. Great that we have a data center. That's amazing. Tons of HVAC jobs, construction jobs, energy jobs when we build a power plant to support the data center, all that kind of stuff. The question for our economy for the next 25 years is, will we be able to keep and attract talented people, computer scientists, engineers, folks with the skills to use those data centers to build many tech hubs around those data centers? We're not
back to the brain drain.
Back to the brain drain.
Back to going back what you said about our universities and
absolutely
training people with degrees at jobs that we can use here in Mississippi.
Absolutely.
And you got to provide those jobs.
That's right.
We can't provide them, but you got to set us up for the companies to come here to build it, and it just keeps giving. It's a gift that keeps giving.
I'm here to tell you, though, the demand for those kinds of workers is here. Even simpler example, think about CPA firms. Every CPA firm in the state could use more people right now. We are just simply not producing and keeping enough young, talented accountants here. So we have to do a better job of reorienting our universities to be much more practical, to have much more common sense. We got to fund degree programs that actually work and not the ones that are kind of woke. And I'm here to tell you this too. If we don't do that, other states are doing it. North Carolina is doing it right now. They're reforming the way their universities work. They cut out funding for DEI long before we did. They eliminated all the positions, the DEI positions, and they moved all that money to campus police. They are going to get this right. Texas is going to find a way to get this right. North Carolina is going to find a way to get this right. Tennessee is going to find a way to get it right. If we don't, we're going to get left in the dust. It's really the steps that we need to take to bring economic development forward in the next 25 years are not just steps that would be good for Mississippi. They are steps that we are going to have to take, or we are going to get left in the dust. And the next wave of data centers and industrial facilities and car plants, they're all going to be built in Mexico, because capital always moves to where it's cheap to build. They're going to be built in Mexico in 25 years, and we're going to look like the worst towns in Indiana or Ohio that have been bombed out and nobody lives in anymore, unless we take advantage of this moment right here.
Well, look what happened to Detroit.
Bingo.
50 years ago, Detroit was one of the richest, most vibrant cities in the world. And then NAFTA sent everything overseas, basically, and here we are. I was talking earlier, I don't know if it was on the show or during the break. We got to teach America how to work again. Whether it's trade schools. And when I say trade, I don't automatically just mean mechanics, HVAC and stuff of that nature, the kind of jobs that you're just talking about. Do I really need to go to a university and learn about all this other stuff to know how to work on a computer? Like, can I just go and focus on that specifically? Like, I think we really got to just rearrange how we look at education, higher education as a whole, and quit forcing people to also be good at this, even though it's going to have nothing to do with what you do for the rest of your life. Everybody ain't built for that. Just like everybody ain't built to go be a mechanic or a technician. They may be extremely book smart. I said, we just got to really look at how we do these degrees and these trade schools and these skills and stuff moving forward into this next economy, and creating an economy here in America, here in Mississippi and America in general, that's AI proof.
That's right.
Like, as far as jobs go, what kind of, can we start churning out jobs that are AI proof? Because I don't think lawyers are going to be AI proof.
No.
I don't think engineers are going to be AI proof.
Nope.
I just don't. I mean, that's not a knock at any of them, but we're going to have to start looking at the type of positions that are AI proof. And because it's coming, and it's coming fast.
I agree.
What do we do?
I think rethinking how we talk to kids about the skills that they're going to get and what they're going to need is absolutely critical. But look, let's say this too. We got a lot of young folks, for good reason, who wake up on Saturday morning, they turn on ESPN, they see Ole Miss or State or USM or Jackson State playing football, and they see the campus life, and it looks awesome. And they want to go there for good reason. It seems really fun. They think, well, maybe I'll meet the person that I'm going to marry there. Maybe, I'm definitely going to have a good time. I'm going to go to all the games. There are kids who get sold on the university experience long before they think about what skills they're getting.
Oh yeah, especially if their parents went there and they grew up going to the football games.
That's right.
And, the whole experience, like, I want to go to State, I want to go to Ole Miss or JSU or wherever, because, it's a tradition.
Yep. So if they get locked in on that vision for their life, they want to do that for 4 years, you got to also point them in the direction of a degree program that's not going to put them in massive debt and is going to lead to a job at the end of it. That's why when I meet a young kid, I got interviewed by a high school student doing his senior project the other day, and he said, I want to major in political science. I said, look, man, that's great that you're interested in politics. If you're interested in politics and you really want to learn politics, go work on campaigns, first of all. Second of all, if you insist on majoring in political science, I did. Also major in something else that is useful. So I also majored in economics, which has a very high ROI in terms of degree programs. I told him, go major in finance or business administration or something else where you leave that university experience with a clear set of skills that you can use later on. That's what we need to be telling young kids going through the university system now.
All right, I got 2 quick questions. I know you got to get out of here. One's more of a comment than anything. Explain to people that may not understand, in as short of a version as you can, why it's important to shut down this DEI stuff in these universities.
Yep.
For somebody out there listening just doesn't understand it beyond surface level.
Yep. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a set of ideas that got turned into offices in universities, offices in big corporations, that basically teach people that there's a constant class of oppressed folks, typically based on race, and that we have to totally change society and how we think about society in order to help these oppressed folks. And the danger with that ideology is that you end up demonizing other people because of the color of their skin. So that's why you see this term whiteness as a negative term used over and over in DEI offices. And not only do we end up demonizing some people because of things like the color of their skin, but we also teach another group of people to think of themselves as constant victims. So they believe the world is perpetually rigged against them and they cannot succeed. This is a very dangerous ideology that developed out in California in the mid-20th century. It spread across universities, government, and business, and we have to shut it down if we're going to have a good, productive society where everybody is treated fairly and everybody is told you can succeed if you work hard.
And the irony with it is the people that it benefited the most were white women.
Yeah. I totally agree.
It didn't actually help with racial diversity at all. It helped white women and the LGBTQ folks more than anybody else. And it's like black people have kind of been the flag bearer for it. And I've heard that, I'm regurgitating what I've heard a lot of black people say here.
Interesting.
And black Democrats too, that have kind of seeing it and realizing, hey, we kind of ended up falling on the sword for this. And it looks really bad. And it makes us, it has black people in positions when they get a position now, and this is one of the negative impacts, unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Now, when a lot of people, and maybe I'm saying I'm guilty of it, because I know that's how this is going to be taken. You see a black person in a high-ranking job. Why did they get that? Was that a DEI job? Was they a DEI hire? And you don't want to think like that about people. But that's what this creates.
That's right. I wouldn't want somebody to think, oh, he got that job because of something that was out of his control, the color of his skin. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really humiliating way to go through life, where you're constantly wondering if people are wondering whether you deserve the thing that you got.
Yeah.
And
no matter how hard you work.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. You really got to work twice as hard to prove a point when you already got the job. And I think that's one of the unintended side effects of this whole thing. And maybe it wasn't unintended, but it feels like it would have to be.
Yeah.
Because now, and I have a lot of my black friends that speak up on this. Like, now, if I get a damn promotion, people think I just got it because I'm black.
Yep.
Or because I'm gay or whatever, when I actually earned it.
That's
just
right.
like anybody else.
That's
so
right.
It really sucks.
And it's been cloaked completely in these words that sound kind of nice or used to sound kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
How can you be against diversity? I actually got asked that question by a reporter in Mississippi. How can you be against diversity? I said, do you think I'm against diversity? Like, I'm in a biracial marriage. You think I'm against diversity? Like, come on, man, wake up. This is not about diversity. This is about indoctrinating people with a very dangerous, specific set of ideas that we have to shut down. And you are trying to keep that system going by pretending that it's just about a couple of nice sounding words. So, there was a long time in Mississippi where everybody was afraid to point this stuff out, and you got yelled at if you even said the words that I just said.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's different. And I really do credit President Trump, because he came in and he said, this is what DEI is. I don't know what you've heard. This is what it does to the federal government, and we are shutting it down. And that's when a lot of the folks who were kind of confused or on the fence, they woke up and they started thinking, oh man, well, I trust the president and he's telling me this is bad. We got to put a stop to this. And then all of a sudden, all the establishment politicians acted like they were always against DEI. They're like, oh yeah, he's right. We got to shut it down. I'm here for it. I'm glad that they came along for the ride. It took a lot of work to get there. I'm glad DEI is being shut down at our universities. But we have to be vigilant, because these ideologies don't go away.
Well, we blatantly ignored these conversations for so long that now and I've talked about this yesterday, when you finally pipe up and start addressing the elephant in the room,
Yep.
Oh my God, that's racist. No. Having a conversation about race is not racist.
That's
But
exactly
we've completely ignored these conversations for so long, and we're told you're not allowed to ask any questions.
Yep.
If you ask a question, that's racism. And that's not the case. And I was like, no, we got to talk about some of this stuff, because it's like an out of control locomotive going down the tracks
Yep.
with no brakes. If you
Yep.
don't talk about it and address it at some point, you have the unintended consequences of now, oh, look, that black person or minority or whatever got a high ranking job. I must be DEI hire.
Yep.
And you don't want to go through life like that. Shad, I wanted to talk to you about Harvard and all the stuff going on there. I know we're out of time.
I'll come back, man. This is
I
fun.
appreciate it. Yeah, look, man, this is the first of many more.
Yeah.
And even not the first, but hopefully it's we do this plenty more between now and, well, forever. But especially as you make a decision about 2028, and
I'm all about it,
we want to be on the front seat, in the front seat with you on that journey. And really appreciate you taking the time today, especially the extra time here for my YouTube audience. We got a couple smart ass questions. We're not going to get to those. I appreciate them though.
We'll do it next time.
Absolutely.
Smart asses.
Shad White, state auditor, potentially the next governor of Mississippi. We appreciate all the hard work you're doing, Shad.
Thanks, bro.
And just keep it up, brother.
Thanks,
honesty will always lead the way, and that's what people like, and that's what people respect, whether they agree with you all the time or not.
Thanks, man.
If I disagree with you on something, I know you're being honest.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, bro.
Appreciate y'all. Be blessed.